Good afternoon and welcome to our April Lunch and Learn virtual event. Thank you for joining us for the next 60 minutes to hear a lively and informative discussion on how organizers can use data to develop creative and successful solutions for our hybrid events. I've been encouraged to watch our industry as we come back to life with job postings for employment, more sites visits taking place, in-person planning meetings. I have one next week. I can't wait. And trade shows being built out in our convention centers across the country and around the world. I want to thank you for your generosity in supporting our two charities to date, United Community and the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. April is National Parkinson's Awareness Month. As I remember the struggle my father had with this disease for close to 10 years, I am encouraged that research continues to advance closer to discovering the reasons why and how the medical community can effectively treat patients. And your donations are a small part of their success. For that, I thank you. Please join me in thanking our sponsors, ASP, Clarity, CVent, EPNAT, Mara Association and Media Management, and MDG for their continued support of the chapter. I encourage our suppliers to consider supporting the chapter's events throughout the year. Phil Sams, our Director of Sponsorships, is more than ready to discuss opportunities with you for the chapter. I have a couple reminders for you today before we get started. Polling will take place throughout the presentation. Text Donna J 383 to 22333 or open your browser to pollev.com/Donna J 383 so that you can participate when we ask you to participate in the polls. The recording and any takeaway from the events today will be available on the chapter website, and for attending, you earn one CE unit. Be sure to mark your calendar for May 14th when we will be having a conversation about attendee safety. Registration will be open soon. And now it is time to turn the screen over to our distinguished panel to have a discussion on solutions for our hybrid events. It is a privilege and honor to introduce the moderator for today's session. He is a motivational speaker and a 30-plus year veteran in the hospitality industry, including former sales director for the Disney Institute. He is also an author, executive coach, and certainly knows how to bring the house down as a keynote speaker with his passion to spark listeners to lead differently. It is my honor to introduce my friend and my Be the Spark encourager, Simon T. Bailey.
Wow, Donna, that is so kind. Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon. How are you? Happy Friday. Can you believe the weekend is already here? Wow. So I'm so excited to be with you today. There are 3 industry trends that I want to share with you right out the gate. The first one is, according to Forrester, that did this back in February 2021, what they are saying is that 72% of future events will include more robust digital elements. That's the first big industry trend. Second one comes from North Star Meetings Group, and they asked the question of all of their readers in March, just last month. And what they have discovered, more than half of the respondents, 54%, are now planning meetings with both online and in-person components, or planning to do so. And this is up, get this is up from 48% when they last asked this question in January. And then the third final industry trend, this comes from Event Manager Blog. They ask all of their readers, what form will most events take in 2021? 44.8% said hybrid and 55.2% said virtual. Okay. With that said, I want to introduce you to our amazing panel. They are absolutely brilliant. Alyssa Peltier, Senior Manager, Industry Marketing for CVent. Alyssa is a marketing professional with over 10 years of experience. Since 2016, Alyssa has worked to build the global event marketing function at Cvent, ensuring its largest marquee event programs were designed and executed in alignment with Cvent's corporate objectives. Her major focus was on creation of unique experiences and establishing quantifiable and integrated metrics to drive ROI. So she's like wicked smart, as they would say in Boston. And transitioning to her new role under the product market team, Alyssa is now responsible for working cross functionally to craft go to market marketing strategies across Cvent's portfolio of solutions. And if she keeps this up, she may be CEO one day. I'm just saying. Okay, our next person, John McGarry. Oh my goodness, John, SVP. Can I get a what? All right, SVP meaning big dog, right? Anyway, business development and brand strategy for the National Association of Home Builders. His team oversees exhibitor and attendee marketing and sponsorship sales for the International Builders Show. I've actually been to that show. It's like 20 years ago. It's a big show, amazing show. Also, his team runs the NAHB Studios, a video production group that services all of their filming needs, along with providing services for local associations and businesses. Wink, wink. Okay, and then John has managed trade show portfolios at Reed Expositions and Emerald Expositions. Did you like, John, how I slipped that in there, right? Everyone listening. And then our third an amazing panelist is Carrie Rice. Carrie Rice is a event planner for Federal Conference. She's an experienced account manager who has been responsible for logistics and planning of more than, get this, 250 events. What? Across the United States, as well as internationally during her career. She served as an account manager for a variety of corporate, association, and government clients with events ranging in sizes from 10 to 3,000. Can we say smart, like super smart, right? In addition, she serves as a business event strategist for several of her key accounts, providing strategy and ideas for in-person events. In 2020, Carrie used her strategic background to serve her clients in shifting to design and building virtual events. So as you can already tell, we have amazing experts that are going to share with us. And we know that we've already launched the word cloud around this whole question of what does hybrid mean to you? So I can't wait to see what all of you have been saying thus far, what hybrid means to you. And so we'll see that poll. And as we look at this poll and think about this poll, wow. And if you haven't sent or text in what your thoughts were, please do. Look at this. All right, challenging, complex, dual, in-person, sharing, extend. Wow, so good. So here's what we're going to do. Alyssa is going to share with us her thoughts around this whole question. So Alyssa, take it away.
Thank you so much for that lively introduction, Simon. That was very fun to hear us hyped up. I feel fully ready to take the stage now. I love seeing that word cloud too come in. It's really validating to hear what we are also hearing from our customers. And so what hybrid means for Cvent and for myself included, as I've helped to shape that definition across our organization. These conversations are really starting to pick up, and like Donna alluded to already, I think we're really excited to start seeing the in-person components of our event start to come back online, but we are also seeing that those are looking a little bit differently. Like Simon was just saying, the data is supporting that these events are looking to be hybrid. So you'll see some of those key considerations of what we think of when we think about a hybrid event experience, in the fact that attendees are going to be in multiple locations, virtual and in person, or possibly even a series of connected locations that are stitched together by technology, but that the ratio of one to the other doesn't necessarily matter. So we might have huge virtual audiences and smaller in person. That scale might tip as we move towards recovery, right? Secondly, attendees might mix in both content and networking, but they aren't necessarily required to do so. They can still be disparate experiences for both the in-person and the virtual audience. Just depends on what the nature of your strategy is. We do see that content can be consumed at the same time, like in the form of a live stream, but the experience is going to need to be optimized for each of those audiences. I think we learned a lot last year in our virtual experiences that virtual attendees don't necessarily plan to sit through long sessions. And they're going to be looking for more of that bite-sized content, a lot more dynamic production. Think of a sports broadcast or a late night talk show or even a morning talk show, or kind of what we're doing here, right? It's a lot more dynamic than those webinar programs that we saw pre-pandemic times. And then attendees are also going to have different motivations or drivers for participating in either of those experiences. And that's really going to help set the strategy and the tone and the approach for that overall event design. And we do see a couple of different models here starting to take shape. So if we can click to the next slide, I can go into detail about that just a little bit more. So let's take a look at what CVent refers to as this hybrid 1.0 model. This usually takes a more limited content approach from the in-person, I like to call it the event nucleus, and then live streams those out, usually to a virtual audience on sites like Facebook Live or YouTube. The online viewers, though, are treated as just that. They're not likely considered registrants or attendees of the event itself. We also see in this model that the in-person audience experience is somewhat prioritized, and it is the optimized one. And that leaves the online viewers looking like voyeurs and less like more that active event participant that we might start to see in the new model, which we'll talk about in one second. And then lastly, this hybrid model is going to sport a little bit more of a one-way communication approach. So there's going to be less interaction, or if any, across both of those audiences. So let's take a look at this second model. We can transition to the next slide here, and what hybrid 2.0 looks like, or what it might look like as we kind of emerge out of this pandemic and we start to see the in-person element start to come back on. So we're starting to see that there could be more two-way connectivity and much deeper engagement fostered between both of those audiences. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. But by way of more evolved technologies, CVent has developed and accelerated its we already were a technology provider. Now we're doing even more technology through virtual events. So individuals like our organization and others are just adopting these more intra-connected experiences for those two audiences. And so you'll see that both of the experiences that develop for those audiences are going to be purposeful. They're going to be optimized, and neither one of those is going to be seen as a less than experience, right? And so lastly, the third thing related to content is we're also seeing that produce live or pre-recorded. It could be consumed live or on demand. It's not just this kind of static definition of live streaming anymore. So I think that's really important as we start to think about what our programs could look like, and as we start to brainstorm and become these event scientists that I like to call us into the future, and into Q3 and Q4. Now let's transition to the next slide. I did want to touch quickly on this business case for hybrid, which I think a lot of us are grappling with right now. Just seeing, I think one of the words that came up on the word cloud was challenging, right? And I think this is probably part of the complexity, right? It's resource constraints, it's budgeting constraints. And so these are conversations you're having with your internal stakeholders right now. So bear with me on this very complex slide. It's probably more of a corporate leaning perspective, but I think you'll see some value as you look deeper into your hybrid objectives and how you would ultimately tie your event outcomes to impact on your organization. So what we're looking at here is a granular look at an ROI sales conversion funnel. And so at the top, we see this possible explosion of anticipated lead volume by way of an increase in registrations and attendance in the virtual space. I think a lot of us saw success in our programs with just exponential growth. I know the program that I was a part of, CVent Connect, went from 4,000 in-person attendees in 2019 to 43,000 attendees. So we see a potential for an explosion of opportunity at the top of the funnel, like the largest metric that you have, right? So as we track this type of conversion, of the success conversion down the funnel, we would acknowledge then that those individuals who participate in an in-person experience are going to convert or deliver more value to your organization than those that would elect the virtual experience. It's just natural because of the varying levels of engagement expected within each of those audience segments. We can anticipate that that virtual audience is just going to be lesser engaged because they have the barrier of a computer monitor. There isn't that tactile experience. And so they're going to convert at a slightly lower rate. It's just assumed. But even if that conversion rate is half of that of a typical in-person attendee, or that engagement is half that, we still see the opportunity to drive increased revenue within this hybrid event experience. And of course, we also still have to acknowledge that there's going to be an increase in the total event cost, but even still in this model, we see a company having a positive return on investment, and that case for hybrid can be made. So I know I've talked a lot. I definitely want to hear from the other panelists. I'll pass it back to you, Simon. I'd love to hear from them as well.
I'm looking at the slide. I was like, wow, that's so good. I'm curious, John, you can weigh in and share some thoughts.
Absolutely. I can tell you what I can add to that actually, which is really interesting. After we just executed our virtual event back in February, one of the things we tried, which was new, which was basically virtual networking online. We've discovered that has been one of the best assets, the most valuable thing that we can do in our industry. We're doing it right now, correct? Right? We're networking. We're learning from each other. And in industries, that's what people want to do. It's one of the number one reasons why people come to our live events, right? So you need to have that networking element into everything that you do. So for example, we made it very topical. We would take a major industry that's going on in our industry right now. For us, it's lumber pricing and access to materials during the pandemic, right? So we had a moderator who was well-versed in the industry, someone from the media, but however, what we're considering on the sponsorship side is that someone from a lumber company could be the moderator, right? They're seen as a thought leader in the industry, right? And then they're driving the conversation. They're asking the questions. One of the things you have to remember is make sure everyone is on camera. It makes it a little bit more enjoyable. Everyone's a little bit more dynamic, but you can wrap sponsorships throughout that, that presentation and that experience from the start. The moderator might be, the sponsor. You just have to review their questions beforehand, so it's not a commercial message. There might be a video as well, but I can't stress that enough. Is that learning from each other, and make it topical about what are the most pressing things going on in your industry. That's one learning point. As we go into the exhibitor and virtual model, and I know a lot of people on today haven't even done that yet. If you think about it, a lot of us haven't done that. We haven't had both the live and the virtual model. One of the things that I would stress is to have all those pieces together when you're approaching sponsors or exhibitors. If you're on the exhibitor model, that's great. You have your live exhibitor model and then you have your virtual model, and you're offering that all out at the same time. And it's funny, when I was writing my notes on this, there are a lot of things that translate from live to virtual. Give you an example. Banners that someone might put out at the convention center. Well, you can have a banner online. That can be all part of the package. New product zones. Some people have new product zones on site at the live event. You have a featured new product gallery online. These are all things that you can package in. And the models that I think everyone should be looking at right now is, coming back to the live event. You're exhibiting at the live event. You get a basic package in the virtual event that could be free, but you've got upgrades into higher levels, right? The other model could be, if you're exhibiting in the live event, you just purely get a discount in the virtual event. And then, sometimes it's the exhibitor model might not work for your industry. It's just purely sponsorship based. So if you're sponsoring the event and the live event, you could sponsor it online. I think you really need to consider those three. Some of the other things that translate really well virtual, live to virtual, are registration sponsorships. networking lounge. Opening ceremonies is perfect. You're recording that. The sponsor's getting the exposure in the opening ceremony, and then they're getting it. They're getting the exposure in the virtual event as well. One of the things that I would stress is having passive and proactive lead acquisition. And what I mean by that is some virtual providers will set up the exhibit floor, so to speak. When an attendee visits with that exhibitor automatically gets that lead, right? That's been one of the most valuable assets in the virtual world. But the proactive ones are much more valuable to that exhibitor, right? It's people who have said, hey, I love your product. I want to hear more. I want to chat with you. I want to get more information from you. So passive and proactive. Promoting 3D experiences are key. We've had exhibitors that produce 3D showrooms that were highly interactive. People love them. And what these customers do is they promote them after the event as well. So not only they're valuable for the virtual experience, they're valuable for an offsite experience as well. And the last thing I would leave you with is just don't be afraid to test things in the virtual platform. This is all new to us. We learned a lot. There's a lot that we would move forward with. There are some things we won't. But you really have to think about how you're going to make that connection between the live and the virtual and what you can combine as a package for your customers. Thank you.
Wow. This is John, thank you so much. Hopefully you have been taking notes and really thinking about what you can implement and execute immediately. Carrie, would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, not just ditto, right? No, not just ditto. Yeah. So to build on what John said, because there was lots of nuggets in there, right? Lots of good stuff in there. Both Alyssa and John, those comments are so true. And Alyssa, I was actually, while you're going through the slides, I was just jotting down like that event scientist, right? And that goes into what John just mentioned about get creative, try it, even if it doesn't work. And I think that's all I've been doing with my clients in the last year is being creative. Hybrid used to mean it was expensive and troublesome and feel overwhelming. And you would have to have a team of 100 to accomplish that, right? And then we had the pandemic hit and we all went, well, we better just figure this out. And so as you strategized last year, I hope everybody kind of started to think of that transition plan, right? So not just what does virtual look like, but what is it going to look like once you move back into the hybrid world? Like, will you move back into in-person and change it into hybrid? A lot of my clients don't necessarily have those large budgets, right? So we're not looking necessarily at, we can go ahead and stream everything. But what we did do is take what was already working and try to flex it. And I think that's what's really important for everybody to take a look at is that and Alyssa mentioned this too, it's not a one size fits all. You have to take a look at your particular industry, your particular audience. And she mentioned there's some great stats in those slides, right? About what does it look like from the standpoint of what's going to fit, what you can get away with. And that's just it. That there's not always a time where that's going to work out. So I think there's some really good things that are coming, and to kind of say John just gave us so many quick things, but he's totally right that the sponsorships is where it's at. We saw in the virtual experience that you couldn't just take an in-person event and just turn it virtual. Nope, didn't work, right? Were people really going to visit those exhibitors? No, not really. Maybe, sort of, but they're not going to sit for very long periods of time. And then the more that we hit them with a virtual event after a virtual event after a virtual event, then you start seeing whether or not they would show up in person, or do they just want to look for that recording, or what are they looking for, right? So I think that's the thing that you've got to keep looking at is how can you create some sponsorship perspectives? And sometimes that's really where it's at. Specifically at an event last year, that we decided not to do exhibitors and only do sponsors in a virtual space, allowing for just what John mentioned, where it was sessions that were moderated by organizations, but we had a list of commandments because this organization is the Quirks event. So commandments instead of commandments, little play on words there.
So
Mhm.
that was the fact that you can't be a sales pitch. It's not, you cannot, or you won't be allowed to come back. And really, it doesn't work anyways. What can you bring to the audience, or whatever that they were bringing from a sales perspective, that they can create some case study information rather than making it more of a product pitch? So I think that there is a lot of opportunity there. And that's honestly what hybrid means to me is not really what it means to me, it's what it means to everyone else and what it means to their particular audience.
Wow,
Simon, if I
awesome.
could just add one more, if I can just
Sure.
add one more to what John was saying too, I think what we're talking about truly is new definitions of success in the virtual and the in-person space. I think John was talking about that perfectly, but what we're talking about in virtual is brand awareness, because what you're seeing is massive opportunity for your brand to get in front of a larger audience. So the inherent value of that experience is brand awareness. That's how you quantify it. What you get in the in-person is deeper relationship building and more engagement. And because of that, you're actually getting lead quantification. So it's two different things. It's not a one-to-one relationship. You're getting different output in those experiences. And both of those have value to an organization. I've given the recommendation to work with your digital marketing teams or digital resources, because those individuals know the value of eyes on a brand as it pertains to generating engagement that ultimately leads to lead generation. But they're aware of that brand awareness activity as it specifically pertains to a digital space. So they can help you build your sponsorship prospectuses out. That's the point that I'm trying to make here, is use those resources to help you understand an environment that you're not also comfortable with, but can get a best practice sorted out with them.
Wow, that's great. I have given 27 presentations over the last 30 days in 13 industries. And from a speaker perspective, number one, the magic is in the chat. So for those who are doing the virtual online events, having a social media person that keeps the conversation moving along, reposting key takeaways, I think is critically important. The second thing, I had to do an in-person event a couple of weeks ago in Dallas, and I was supposed to have 300 people in my room and people joining virtually. There were 0 people in my breakout room, but 150 people were online. So imagine I had to go straight to camera. They had the PowerPoint, and it was in the moment. It was real for me. And because I was in Texas, you probably are saying, bless his heart. but really just going straight to camera. And then the third thing, pre-record always is a winner, because it ensures that you get exactly what you need. But give yourself enough time to preview the pre-record in case you want it done over again. I just experienced that with a large multinational company. Huge epiphany for us, because everything went through legal and it wasn't enough time to do the pre-record over again. So they went with it and they got what they needed. And then I showed up live to answer events on day of. So just be thinking, what's that engagement like? All right. Question, how much of the problem around attendees not engaging exhibitors in virtual comes from organizers only offering that exhibitor a chance to offer a link to their website? Aren't organizers crippling the expo side engagement opportunity? Who wants to answer that?
That's not a wrong
I'll take
statement.
that.
I don't. Yeah, I was gonna say, go ahead, John.
Um,
He looked like he really wanted that one. It was meaty. It was there.
no. One of the things we experienced was, what was I mentioned it before about the exhibitors, their ability to get leads, and that was one of the most important thing to the exhibitors, in lieu of not having our live event, right? So they wanted to get leads, but what was most important, and we advised them in this regard wherever we could, was that, presenting 100 SKUs, 100 different products in a virtual environment is not the way to go. You want to focus on that one new product that you want to present to the marketplace, because you're not going to have that much time. How are you going to do that? By setting up live demos. So we did actually have some live content from the exhibitors, whether it's recorded or live. All right, so you're presenting that new product. How does it work? Explain it to them in a live environment, how it's used, right? So we're in the building industry. One of the things we did that was part of our content and our education was we had about 20 something demos of products. But what was different is that we were all on site at a location building homes, where normally when we do this, we do it on the show floor and it's in a convention center. That's where actually this was better. It was like at a live location. So it's getting back to the elements that are going to help an exhibitor be more successful is tying into the amount of time, which we were just referencing, that people are going to spend virtually as opposed to live. And you just have to make it easy and quick, and shorter is always better.
To piggyback on that, one of our clients actually knows that even for our in-person environments, sessions were never going to be more than 30 minutes because the data shows that anything for more than 30 to 45 minutes is just too long for people to sit. And that's not just for virtual, that was for in-person, that data's been around. So really still think about that, is that you probably have lost even a little bit more time, or definitely from distractions, right? So yeah, just paying attention to shifting that model and making sense. As far as the organizers, like killing the exhibitors, killing that show floor, I think there's a lot of really great software, wearables, all kinds of things that now are in the industry where you really can create a lot more engagement, even for those that are with exhibitors being on the show floor and still being able to interact with people that are at home. There's lots of particularly I work with Click. And sorry, Melissa, because that's not CVET.
That's okay.
For one of my shows, I work with Click, and we have for the last several years as wearables, and that creates an environment where they can just open up their phone and interact with somebody who might not be in front of them, but can. So, yeah.
All right. Quick question. What data points are you using to measure success of engagements?
Ooh, I can take that one. So with CVent, it's a number of data points that you can, our platform allows you to capture tons of insights, right? So it starts at the most basic of registration to attendance, to session check-in, both virtually or in person. Those are analogous data points to us. The duration spent in either of those sessions, so how long you were watching that thing, again, both an analogous data point to in-person or an available data point to in-person and the virtual environment. Amount of time spent in a chat. Did you participate in a poll? Did you submit a question for live Q&A? All of those are behavioral insights that would fuel the success of your program. So you can start small. You can start with just the registration at the most basic data point, but you can go pretty deep with behavior data. How many exhibitors did you meet with? How long did you meet with them? The list goes on and on. So it really depends on what is the objective of your event, and then how are you tracking? How do you have a data capture strategy that maps back towards that or accounts for that?
Awesome. I want to shift gears. And John, have you share with us, what are some creative ways to engage?
Oh, God. A number of different ways. Some of it is some of the traditional things. What was interesting in doing all this? It was a combination of things we do in the traditional world that complement the virtual world. And what I mean by that is, we had in our packages the ability for some of the exhibitors to reach out to attendees prior to and invite them to their experience, right? And so they would take part of that experience while on the show, and then there might be a follow-up, after show as well. It's really all about the content. It's what's going to be most interesting to that attendee at that point in time. It depends upon the products. It just depends upon what the overall experience you can build. We were trying to stress not just don't have like a static image or a static page on the website. Make your videos engaging. People, they view videos more than anything else. Live events, just interaction with other attendees. If there's a community that you can have that's part of your platform, again, that's all part of the networking, right? Someone can sponsor that community or be a major sponsor of it. Again, talking about segmented communities with people with like interests that would keep people. And I really like what Alyssa said about it's not just the numbers, it's dwell time, right? It's how much time. And that's the key here. It's that you really have to make it short, engaging, make the next element that more interesting so that you're keeping people on for longer periods of time.
Thank you. And I'm curious just to see what the feedback has been in the word cloud. For those of you who responded to this particular question as to what are you doing to create more creative solutions? So gamification, karaoke, wow, entertainment, walkthrough, live, dance, trivia, interactive. Very nice. So, Alyssa, Carrie, what other ideas, creative ways to engage?
I can take that one. So I already mentioned them, but click. So there's gamification. That's always been a big hit. Well, I say that, but know your audience, right? So when you're doing things that come to creativity, make sure that you know your audience and what they're going to get behind. As particularly, we're going to actually try some staggered approaches. So not expecting that we would just do everything all at once. We actually would offer some in-person, and then for those that are in-person, they can actually then go back, and a couple weeks later we can do some more content. From exhibitors as well. Now we're going to get into what about doing some sponsorships around things like Click has some wearables when it comes to reminding people to wash their hands. It's very interesting. You can put a logo right on it. I think that this coming year, it's a pretty big one. And yes, there's gonna be hand sanitizer stations everywhere. You could definitely slap logos on there. There's all kinds of opportunities for sponsorships, as John had mentioned. But I think it's also just staying small. So just remembering that even that's for in-person, but even when you're coming to online, keep your group smaller. You talked about dwell time. I've actually always said that it's when I have exhibitors say to me like, well, there wasn't enough people. And I'm like, well, what did you do to connect? What did you stand behind a table? It's the same thing in a virtual world. You can't just expect that they're going to come to you. So what are you going to do? What's in it for them? Can you offer something valuable? And it can't just be like, oh, free product, right? Because that's nice, but what can really be in it for them? Was it something that they could do with their family? Is it what's going to bring them to you? It's going to make sure that they visit you both, if they're online, that they're going to make that time. Matchmaking, John, I know that we had talked about this before, and I kind of remember you briefly touching on it, but I think matchmaking is going to come in huge, and Cvent, has a great matchmaking opportunity within their platform, so that you can really cut down on the time of like, who do you need to be connecting with? Because when you do have limited time, and you talk about that dwell time, you want to make sure that you're making meaningful connections. So I think it's really important when you're look for software that is going to have that ability to allow your attendees to figure out exactly where they need to go and do it quickly, because you just know that they're not going to spend their entire day with you like they would have on the show floor. You're not offering free drinks, you might be offering free drinks, but it's not as easy in a virtual world to be offering those things to keep them on the floor. So just some different things to really, truly nuggets. But I think the biggest thing is you just really have to know your audience. And if it wasn't going to work in person, it's not going to work virtually, and it's definitely not going to work in a hybrid environment.
Thank you, Carrie. Hey, Alyssa, quick question. How should an organizer use data to enhance engagement?
Ooh, that's a meaty one to unpack. How do we use data to inform engagement? Put me on the spot, Simon. I don't know. Data's everywhere. Like should be informing your strategy from the start, right? It's not just informing engagement. It's informing who you're choosing to come to your event in the first place. I love that Carrie keeps taking this audience first approach to everything, because that's the way that our organization thinks about it. It's, you built an event for a purpose. You have data that needs to be the outcome, so you're building everything around that data outcome. So it's my step one is making sure that you have the mechanisms to capture the engagement in the first place, quantifying that engagement in the first place. If you're not capturing it, you can't measure it, you can't use it in your, you use it to your benefit. And then you ultimately can't track to make sure that it's benefiting the audience that you were intending it for in the first place. So I think like step one is just making sure that you have the framework to capture engagement in the first place. Right now we're using a word cloud, so we got to make sure that we can capture all that information to like understand what you all are interested in, to then drive content decisions for the next webinar series that IAEE hosts. Or I think it depends on what you're trying to do. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is understand your strategy, and then data just kind of falls in line.
Awesome. Thank you,
Alyssa, if I can
Another question.
add to that.
Go ahead, John.
If that's
Yeah.
okay, Simon. I think that's absolutely key. And I think why we're stumbled on that question a little bit is that you need to execute several virtual events. Think about your live event, right? All the research you do over the years and the trends that you notice over time, right? In the virtual world, we just quite simply don't have a lot of that, right? So it's exactly, it's the dwell time. It's what people like. What time people, are most of your registrants coming in the first day? Are they coming in at 2 o'clock? Are they coming in at 1 o'clock? And so there's all those time-based things. What are the demographics on the people, that are coming to the virtual event as opposed to the live event? A lot of us, for example, we're counting on accessing people that had never come to our live event before, are bringing in more internationals. Once you have all that data and you're able to analyze it, then you've got your talking points and opportunities for the following year, right? For sponsorships and better marketing and better targeted marketing based upon what people liked and didn't like and the time they spent on things and everything. It's going to be a bit of a different paradigm on the virtual side of things. The more experience we have with it, and the more we do it, quite frankly, so we can kind of, notice some trends in that data.
That's so good. So, all right, net, whoever has the most data has the most influence. I'm just saying. So think about data. And another just little mental post-it note is facts tell, stories sell. The story is in the data. And if you can begin to position the story, I think we'll be reading about you as a person who's influencing the future of our industry. Here's another question in the chat. If you plan to do in person, what can I do to prepare for a hybrid virtual in case I'm unable to make it happen?
Ooh, I mean,
the plan A, plan B approach, right? Alyssa, what are you going to say about this? Because I think
my answer is obviously going to be rooted in technology. You need a technology provider that can flex in any of those spaces. That is the ultimate. I hate to plug Cvent, but this is the ultimate plug for Cvent, because it's a provider that can support in any type of environment, in-person, virtual, hybrid. So if you go all in on a solely in-person provider or a solely virtual provider, you can't necessarily toggle back and forth in the same platform. So you're having to rebuild that entire experience in a different technology. So I think you need an agile provider that can scale with you or keep up with all of the rules and regulations and changes that we're facing in our current climate. But Carrie, I'm sure that you're like living this day to day, right? Having to go back and forth, so you can even add to that.
Yeah, I would actually encourage people to not do that, right? I would say come up with a plan that is going to work and move towards that instead of doing the plan A or the plan B. Because I honestly think if you're thinking that you're just going to be fully back in person, you're not. You're not going to be fully back in person. And even when we are back in person, you're going to see your numbers a little bit slower. And that's just, it's not even because of whether or not there's enough vaccines or travel is back. That simply could be just because people are uncomfortable, companies are uncomfortable. We don't know yet, right? That's the uncertainty of it. But if you think you're just going to go back, you're not. So why not just already start with a hybrid plan? Why do the plan A or plan B? I would challenge you to just go ahead and just bite it and say, we're going to go this way. Right now, I got a lot of flack from an exhibitor, a big sponsor, a couple weeks ago, which was, why are you going to execute an event in July in London? And I gave all data, right? All the data, and said, like, because this, and this, and here's what we're going to do to make sure this, and this. We're going to be committed. And that's what I basically said to all of the exhibitors and sponsors. We will be committed to putting forth the best event that we can put forth within the confines of the safety too, right? So I think that it's just making sure, and Alyssa, when I keep mentioning audiences, it's because I've always told my exhibitors, I'm pretty hard with them. It's kind of like their children, right? You got to put them in a line a little bit. I always say to them is that if the audience is happy, that's what's going to get them coming back to the show. It can't be all about like what's in it for me and from an ROI perspective from an exhibitor. You also have to look at what is the attendee experience like. And we've talked about that for years, about what the attendee experience is like, but really be committed to it. That's what I'm challenging the exhibitors to remind themselves. And more than ever, the attendee audience interaction experience is going to be key for this coming year.
I just wanted to add to what we were talking about on the creative solutions. Sorry, not to interrupt on John, but I think there's a good synthesis of what we were talking about on the creative ways to engage the audiences, right? Which could be for the planner or could be for the exhibitor. At the end of the day, we're talking about engagement, right? But I have this formula that I like to bucketize basically everything that John and Carrie have been talking about already. It is content plus production plus technology or interactivity, if you will, equals maximum engagement or maximum dwell time or maximum mesmerizing audience, right? So whatever you want to insert there, but it ultimately captivates the audience through those three levers that you have at your disposal. And so it really is up to the planner or the experiential designer. I will elevate beyond that title, but it's your job then to get to play with all of those levers, those three levers, and those are going to foster the engagement with the event, because that's ultimately why people are coming to the event in the first place, right? To create those connections to the content and to each other. So what we're talking about with the raw content, it is the pure story, it is the products, it is like the message that you have to tell, right? It's just, is that good? Do you have a good product to sell? Do you have a good message behind it? That's the content. The production is the visual elements. It's the way you stimulate the experience of that content. It's how we're doing things with a nice backdrop. We have overlays right now in our conversation. We're mixing up the screen presentation because it's just a more dynamic way of us to present and converse with our audience today. That's the production layer. It's a better way to tell the story. And then the last piece is technology, which is using that, using word polling, using whatever it is, whatever the tool is that your tech provider gives you. But it's the combination of those three that delivers the engagement.
That's good. John, anything to add?
I actually have a question for Kerry, because when you were talking about, talking to your customer and, about running an event in July, right? And giving them all the great reasons, which I'm sure you did, why you're doing it live and why you're doing it hybrid, right? So I think most of us who have events, let's say in the fall or first quarter of 21, feel pretty good right now about executing your events. You're on like the edge of this, right? So my question to you is, what if you do have to make a decision about not doing the live and going with the virtual? Like, are you ready for that? Do you have that in the back of your mind? If for whatever reason I can't do the live, I've built enough on the virtual side that I can carry this through.
Yeah, actually, this particular client that we're doing this event and that I'm doing this event for actually grew from 3 events to 5 events in a year. Instead of 3 in person, we went to 5. And the idea is we're actually going to keep one of those virtual events because it was such an incredible global experience. So, what do we do? Well, that's the thing. We're partnered with Click. We have been for years because of the wearables. So it allows us already to have that environment where we can be hybrid. We know now what that looks like. Now we actually did 3. We had to I'm not going to use the word pivot. So I'm just going to say that we turned one of our events in the spring of last year into a virtual event. And then we had 2 additional on top of that. So I feel like we actually, for that particular client, I have a pretty good idea of that data, exactly what works, what doesn't work, a model that we can start to then flex to. I do feel pretty confident we'll be at least in person, how many people arrive, but that's based solely on the fact that London has, or the UK in general, has a far less amount of people to vaccinate than us. And I do think that everybody's kind of getting antsy, but I think we'll see a reduction in numbers. I just think that we're willing to like take the risk. And the other thing that went into that is this particular industry that this client is in. They were the last event last year before everything hit. And now it's really exciting to be the first one back. There's something to be said about that synergy aspect of like that energy that we can bring in. People are really, really ready. And that's what we're hearing from the exhibitors and sponsors, that they're willing to go ahead and take the plunge and try it out and see how it's going to happen.
Did
Wow,
you
that's
survey
great.
people at any point in time? Did you survey them
Yeah.
to find out?
Yes,
Yeah.
and actually this is a marketing
We did that
research
as well.
industry. So yeah, so it's marketing research industry. So yeah, they definitely surveyed. And I think really what it comes down to is if the businesses will allow people to travel. It's not necessarily about the individual or being in this particular industry being uncomfortable. It's about whether or not the companies will let them. I would say keep your eyes on Microsoft and Amazon, right? Because they're the big guns. And when they go back in person, then that's when you kind of know they're allowing people to travel. And I actually watch intently. I have it bookmarked where they're headed. So if Microsoft is allowing their speakers to travel to Vegas, because they are in June, I looked at that. Pay attention to those type of things, because when you start to see that they're starting to let their so at least some travel, that means we're headed in the right direction. Because once the big guys make the decision that attendees can go ahead and travel, then we're going to see a lot of other companies follow suit. But somebody's got to be first, and they definitely want somebody like the big companies to be first.
That's so
It's a
good. We
challenge.
just
Yeah,
have
he's scared for me.
we've got a
John's
few
scared for
minutes
me.
left.
Yeah.
Hey, we've just got a few minutes left. And so, Carrie, share just in 30 seconds or less, what's the one big idea that you want everyone to take away from this time?
Oh, I think I probably have been hinting towards it the whole time. That was the theme that you heard, and it's audience, audience, audience. So if your big takeaway is take what Alyssa and John were saying. So take those creative aspects of sponsorships, that brand recognition. It's huge. That is massive. So take brand recognition, take sponsorships. Now look at your data, whatever you have from your in-person, whatever you can glean from if you did have a virtual event. You might not have a fully comprehensive list, but take that and then try to blend it all together. And, just fingers crossed, right? It's a lot of fingers crossed.
Great. One quick question. If you plan to do in person, what can I do to prepare for a hybrid virtual in case, we've already asked, I'm sorry. Have there been any events held yet where the virtual and live elements have been held simultaneously at the same time yet?
Yes. MPI WEC did an event. I believe it was in January timeframe. I think Salesforce has done their world tour using more of that satellite model where you have different kind of streaming stations around the globe. So they're smaller in-person groupings, but then streaming to satellites. I like to call it that way. There's probably a few more too, Carrie. You probably have those in your arsenal.
No, you're right. But that satellite idea that you just brought up, we probably should have talked about that a little bit, because that comes up when we talk about a global event. Because of the fact that everybody thinks you can just have everybody show up at one time, and you can't. It doesn't really work. So even if you think it's going to. So yeah, there are some that are happening. I think particularly for my clients, they're planning on me live streaming some of the bigger sessions, but we actually we're purposely not offering all the content, because we are going to record it, but we're not necessarily going to live stream it, because then we're going to go and offer it a few weeks later to those who, and then we're going to put new content in. So then we're going to bring in some new content that hadn't been seen in person, so that encourages those who are in person. And then we're going to offer discounts. So you also offer discounts to those who are in person to now come in and see the new content online. Just blend it together. See what you can do to try to make it really interactive. So, but know that you might not be able to merge both of them together completely. The two audiences might stay fairly separate.
Here's another question. Is it possible to host a virtual a week or two after the in-person event?
Yes, I think my definition allowed for that for sure. I will say the one caveat to the definition that I kind of exposed would be that you have one registration process. Like, you're kind of under one event brand. If you're just taking the recordings from an in-person and then re-registering for them, kind of what Carrie just alluded to, that's just virtual events and in-person events. We don't need to overcomplicate things by now. It's just in-person and virtual. We're still binary. It's okay. We don't have to call everything hybrid just because we now are in kind of a new world where virtual is in our total program view. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every event we're doing is now hybrid. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so exactly. It's not that when we talk about hybrid, I mean, the true hybrid is that, yes, it's all happening at the same time, and you have both audiences. But I do think that there's some challenges that come to that. And a lot of it, we saw it, like the biggest word was like expensive, right? In the word cloud.
Yep.
And we know that that's the case. So I've been using, and I don't know, it's probably not the right term, but a staggered hybrid approach, right? It's not really hybrid. You're right. It's virtual, it's in person. But taking from trying to pull from more audiences, which goes along with the slide that you showed about how you can increase revenue, and then you provide that to your exhibitors and sponsors, because you can now provide even more recognition for people that you have a bigger reach. And that's why the number that you gave, Simon, right at the beginning about how many people are going to stay virtual, this has forever changed the landscape of our industry. We won't go going back completely. We will stay in a component of virtual, because why wouldn't we? Increasing brand awareness for our exhibitors and our sponsors, that's huge. Why would we ever go away from that? And even though you mentioned this, Alyssa, that it costs a little bit of money, I guarantee you will get a return on that investment.
Awesome.
That was my sales.
John. Oh, that's great. I love how you slipped it in there. John, 30 seconds or less. One big takeaway you want to make sure everyone walks away with.
The one big takeaway, I'm gonna steal two. The one big takeaway is have the plan, have the strategy when you're approaching a sponsor, exhibitor, whatever your model is. Build that model from the beginning. Have that conversation with them about the benefits of being live and virtual as one big package. And it's not all about, just taking a space. It's everything they're doing behind that. It's their pre-show, it's their at show, and their at show is what they do virtual, what they do live, and then the post-show, right? You're kind of building these packages, make it easy for them to participate, customize it, have standard packages. I totally, and the other, and like I said, I'm going to steal two. The other one is, and we just alluded to it, talk to people who have done this. We did a lot of that along the way. We called shows that were, earlier in 2020 who had to cancel their events and quickly go to virtual. What did you learn? What did you do that, it's interesting. They were and even some of the most high tech shows told us, don't do a lot of live. Even I'm in a tech industry and these people didn't even get it. They didn't know how to hook in and everything and all that. Record as much as you can. But even that, I think we've gotten away from it, because our team here said, you know what? There's a lot of things we did really well. You know what? We think we are going to try a little more live. I think the technology is getting better. But again, it's all part of that balancing of risk taking. But those are the two things. And I really look forward to those larger events, such as ours, the International Builder Show, which is 600,000 square feet, over 1,000 exhibitors, 50,000 attendees. House shows of our scale do hybrid. and I'm really interested to see what other people do. That's my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I'm going to turn it back over to Donna. Thank you, panelists, Alyssa, Carrie, John, you were great. Back to you, Donna.
Discussion, data, planning, engagement, know our audiences more. I'm glad that we have the recording to listen to again so I can revisit my notes. I couldn't write things down fast enough. I can't thank Simon, John, Carrie, and Alyssa enough for the creative ideas and insights on how we can continue to develop our hybrid events in a way that creates engagement for both audiences, in person and virtual. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on May 14th.